Bird is the word. It is a cold, gloomy, sleepy Friday morning here at Site B. It is about 8:30. It is 52 degrees and like almost black, gray, spooky fog. Feels like it's October, not April. So it's Friday, and on Friday we don't really do anything. We just kind of bits and bobs and hodgepodge of news and whatever else just stumbles across my chaotic mind. This came across our news feed yesterday, and we found out that people are already upset about it because it's colonialism and has alphabet people in it. And I read through it, and one of my very first thoughts on reading through the little blurb is this feels more like a board game, especially when they talk about end game. And you look at the character sheets, or at least the suggested characters, and these really look more like just static sheets you might find in a board game than a role-playing game. Notice there's no stats, no levels, no nothing. Of course, this could just be an example, and we won't know for the future. But then again, it talks about end game and choices, and it doesn't read like a role-playing game. It reads like something that has a beginning, middle, and end. Also, yesterday, we had the latest update on Daggerheart, and we read through that, and we see that now there's even more token and card mechanics than there was previously, which, of course, on one thing, how do you do immersive role-playing like the people of Critical Role claim they do, but also have all these mechanics and bits and bobs and gears and whistles going on and cards and tokens, and this token represents one thing and this token represents another thing, and this, it seems like that's sort of counterintuitive to immersive tabletop role-playing games if I'm constantly worrying about my token mechanics and my card mechanics and my, what's the word, token economy, getting tokens, spending tokens, getting the tokens back, keeping my tokens separate, can't have my fate tokens touch my action tokens, and stuff like that, and action points and hero points and whatever. It feels more like a board game. And you've heard me say this before. I mean, we go back to like Alice is Missing, and you read through the description of Alice is Missing, and you get to the end of it, and I was like, this is just werewolf, and you just change the names. This isn't a role-playing game. It's a card game. It's a board game. It's a role-playing board game. It's a term you hear me use a lot. So I thought I'd try and explain it. So what's the difference, at least in my mind, between a role-playing board game and a role-playing game? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the one that I think most people at least kind of know about. And that's, oh, wait, I should probably have brought up the picture. I'm prepared. Nope, wrong button. Hold on. I know what I'm doing. Do what I say, kids, not what I do. All right, there we go. All right, most people have heard of this, or at least have seen the figures and the maps and have a general idea. So this is what I would call a role-playing board game. I seriously, the anti-woke sphere has gotten wind of the Tomb Raider game. They act like this isn't new to the RPG. All right, so in this, and how is this different than, say, Warhammer? Is Warhammer a role-playing game? So Hero Quest and games like this are what I would define as a tabletop role-playing board game. You have a character. Character is usually represented like on a card or something. You randomly choose which one you get. You don't have any control over the character's abilities or stats or anything, but you still have a character. Those characters go through an adventure. At the end, during the adventure, they can pick up items and, spells or whatever, and they fight monsters. At the end of the scenario, the adventure, they can level up where they get more stuff, and then you could do it again, and you could even keep track of the character. So for every time you run one of these, you can keep track of their progression. So in all terms, it is kind of similar to a role-playing game. It's got lots of parts. It has all the same things: the beginning, middle, and adventure, level of treasure, experience. Quick, fast, done. You can run it in like an hour, maybe 2 hours. So what's the difference between this and, say, a full-fledged RPG? Well, obviously, with a full-fledged RPG like Dungeons and Dragons or Wretched Vigilantes or whatever, it's the wider scope. It's the ability to do other stuff besides simply the formulaicness of this. Even in the most railroady, formulaic D&D type game where it's just, there's still choices. You can still do things outside of the box. You can still have more control over your character and your character's interaction with the world. With this board game role-playing, your choices are much more limited. You can't just wander off and do whatever, or go off on a tangent, or spend 3 role-playing sessions trying to convince the blacksmith or any of the other things that might come up in a D&D session or a role-playing session. The improvisation, the scattering thoughts, the just coming up with something on the fly, doing something that the adventurer had no idea you were going to do. So this role-playing board games like this are much more contained within a box. Beginning, middle, and end. There's only so many choices that you have, and those choices are clearly defined. You can't just wander off the map to go explore that lake, or because you want to go talk to grandma, or because you've decided that you want to paint your armor blue. Role-playing gives you much more levels of immersion, much more levels of, can I do this? Can I go there? What happens if I do this? Hey, for some reason, I'm wearing a flower pot on my head. So reading through Tomb Raider, and then there's just another one that was announced this morning, role-playing game, that if you read through it, actually 2 of them, they don't feel like role-playing games. They feel like board games. There's terminologies that was in Daggerheart. There's terminology that's in the Tomb Raider blurb. There's terminology in these new games that I'm seeing. And this is, constantly see these things where you read them and you go, this reads like a board game. It doesn't read like a role-playing game. This could be a board game. And sometimes with these, you think, why not just make it a board game? Why not just, or make this an expansion for an existing system? This doesn't feel like it's independent. It doesn't feel like its own thing. It just feels like a derivative, and it kind of reads like the instructions for a card game or Monopoly or whatever. Daggerheart, all these bits and bobs and tokens and whatever, it feels more like a board game. And let's face it, Daggerheart is just an expansion to the already existing Powered by the Apocalypse. It doesn't really need its own system. It could just have been an expansion to Powered by the Apocalypse, or it could be a board game. It reads like a board game. Same with this Tomb Raider thing that I announced yesterday. It reads more like a board game. Doesn't really need to be its own game, because there's already plenty of games that do that. Modern day adventuring, whatever, Indiana Jones type, super spy type stuff. This doesn't need to be its own game. It could just be an expansion for an existing system. Same with the 2 others that were just announced. These could just be, take an existing system and use that, or they could just be board games. This Lara Croft thing could easily be a board game. So what does that mean? I think is what I'm trying to get to here. So, we have this example of a role-playing board game. Hero Quest, beginning, middle, end. You level up, but there's only a finite number of choices that you have. Then we've got Tomb Raider, which kind of reads the same thing. So what is this? What is my point here? What am I just splattering on about? This isn't a news piece. This is an opinion piece. So where am I going with this as I drink more coffee? And as I think where I'm going is, do these need to be role-playing games? And why are we thinking in these terms when we're designing these games? These games that are dependent upon parts and things and gimmicks. These games that read just very linear. You know, when you use terms like final game, final quest, final treasure, final realization, role-playing doesn't have a final. You could continue with a game for as long as the people want. There's no real end unless you all decide we're going to end. You know, if everybody dies, well, that's technically an end, but you make new characters. If when you all hit level 20, you decide we're ending this campaign, fine, but the world goes on. The world of the role-playing world goes on. The world of Wretched Vigilantes continues after I stop writing for it. The world of Dungeons and Dragons continues even if you're not playing with it. That world is out there and it keeps going on. There's the infinite choices available to continue telling the story. But with these bits and bobs and mechanics and word choices, these word choices like endgame, well, that feels finite, right? So why? Is it just that we've run out of ideas? Is it just that we're exhausted? Is it just that we have gotten to the bottom of the imagination well? Or is it just, as Mario here says, hello and welcome to the channel, Mario. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Is it just that because we have placed upon ourselves so many restrictions now because we don't want to risk upsetting anyone, that the only way to do that is to have these implied limitations, these implied safeties, these implied ends? I don't know, man. It kind of feels like we're just out of ideas. You know, everybody complains about Hollywood keep using the same movie, but it's the same with our hobby. A lot of these games just feel the same. Tomb Raider, there's nothing original in this. You're just putting a name on a system and idea that already exists. Daggerheart, you're just putting a name on a bunch of gimmicks that already exist, and those gimmicks don't work together. How are these different than stuff that came out 20, 30 years ago, like Hero Quest? How is this different than just doing Warhammer? You know, spending your points, building your armor, role-playing the story of defending the bridge, and then you know, start over again next week. It's the finiteness of how these games feel. These games feel finite, as opposed to the role-playing games, which feel infinite. I feel confined reading Daggerheart. I don't feel like this is an immersive experience where I'm going to be able to sort of just lose myself in my character for a couple hours and just enjoy the world filled with wonder and danger. Same with the Tomb Raider, same with the two that I read this morning. These feel like a party game that I play at a table with friends for a couple hours because we have nothing else to do. There's a finiteness, and I don't know where this finiteness comes from, whether it's just we've run out of ideas, whether it's just that we've pigeonholed us into that we can't upset anyone mentality, as Mario mentions here about the wokeness or the anti-wokeness, or whatever, you know, the anti-woke griftosphere. I absolutely hate how the anti-woke griftosphere has gotten wind of the Tomb Raider game. They actually, I talked about this yesterday. It's like, what is it exactly that your problem is with this, other than the fact that it's Evil Hat, who's gone out of their way to be problematic? Yeah, that could be it, that these games are built around being one-shots or being short because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time to invest in a multi-year campaign, right? We don't have the attention span to invest in a multi-year campaign. we have the attention span to, let's play once a month for 3 hours or whatever. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the audience that they're trying to get, is that they know that people, adults don't have the time. Maybe that's why they're going for all these nostalgia titles like Tomb Raider. I don't know. See, this is just an opinion piece. I'm tossing this out there. See, I as of now, I have no desire to play Daggerheart because there's just too many pieces and it doesn't feel like a concise whole. I don't have any desire to play Tomb Raider because it's already been done and it doesn't need its own game. Make an expansion for a pre-existing game. We've got Everyday Heroes. Just make a Tomb Raider expansion for Everyday Heroes. And we've got tons of other games that do the exact same thing. Just make, it doesn't need its own game. And with these other ones that I'm reading this morning that I'm looking at right now, I just don't really feel like games. I feel like I could run a short campaign for a couple weeks with Mario and Shadow. We do it for like 3 months, at the end of which we're like, we're done. Finite versus infinite. Anyways, just some early morning, way too cold, way too gloomy for spring thinking. Time is a precious commodity. Yes, so is money. And if I'm going to spend my money on these things, I want more than just the quick bang. Otherwise, it just ends up sitting at my shelf like 90% of the other games I've bought. I've still got games I've never even opened. My Twilight 2000 box is still sealed. You tell me what you're thinking this Friday. I'll get back to you later. See ya.